The adoption of artificial intelligence, it gives my employees an ability to maintain a certain quality of production without actually sacrificing the quality of the work that we're doing.
From Tyler Technologies, this is the Tyler Tech Podcast. I'm your host, Josh Henderson. Today's episode is about modernization at scale. What happens when courts move beyond paper, rethink long-standing processes, and use automation and AI to improve access, efficiency, and resilience? My guest today is John Warren, County Clerk for Dallas County, Texas. With more than 3 decades of experience in the court system, John has led Dallas County through major shifts in how records are managed, how staff are supported, and how the public accesses information. We touch on everything from earning buy-in, using technology to reduce friction, not replace people, and why efficiency ultimately comes down to access. Let's get right into it. All right, John, it's great to have you on the Tyler Tech Podcast today. Thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, Josh, thank you and Tyler for having me. It's an honor.
Of course, we're so glad to have you here. Now, to start things off, can you tell us a little bit about your role as county clerk and what the scope of operations looks like in a county the size of Dallas?
From a court perspective, as a county clerk, I am the custodian of all of the court records. And so under my jurisdiction as a county clerk, I have my civil county courts at law, and I have probate courts. So let me back up. 5 civil courts, county courts at law, 3 probate courts, and I have 13 criminal misdemeanor courts. So it's a relatively large operation. So if you look across that, my probate courts, they also have 3 associate judges. So that makes 6. And so that's a total of over 30 judges that I work with and maintaining court records for all 30 courts.
That's wow. That's a lot. And how long have you been with the clerk's office there in Dallas?
Actually, in the clerk's office, I'm in my 19th year as the county clerk. Prior to that, I worked with the county courts at law as working directly with the judge as a court administrator. I did that for 13 years before I was elected. So totally with the courts in Dallas County, 33 years.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
That's really, really impressive. And now, obviously, in those 33 years, I'm sure you've seen lots of changes, lots of technological changes, I'm sure, as well.
Yes.
But can you run me through that? How has the nature of the clerk's office changed since you first started, especially from that technology or workload perspective?
Mm-hmm. Oh, great question, Josh. I will tell you, when I came to Dallas County in 94, technology was a typewriter.
Nice.
Believe it or not. And so there were very little, they had not even deployed what we would call real computers to all the employees. We operated from the old mainframe, single client database, if you will, where everything is just you use the dumb terminals, the green screens to actually find information as it relates to the indices of a court case to verify that a particular document may have been filed. And then you would have the physical paper file that we had to pull, that the judges will pull to actually review for a hearing or for a trial. So we've come a long way since then. Like I said, it was it was a struggle to a degree to move from no technology to implementing technology over the course of time, because people were afraid. They didn't know what technology meant and how they would use it. So it was a lot of getting buy-in and showing people how it would work and how the business processes that they had been accustomed to for years was going to change, but it gave them more access and a more efficient manner.
That's great. And it's pretty remarkable that you've been witness to all of the changes throughout the years, from essentially no technology to now on the cutting edge of technology with some of the AI offerings that we're you're utilizing.
It's been a huge transformation. So.
Yep. Now, with the volume of filings, records, and public requests that you do manage, where has efficiency historically mattered most for you and your office?
Oh, we don't have enough time, Josh, to talk about that. But to a degree, I will say this: when I ran for office in 2005, I actually ran on a platform of creating a paperless office. And so we had been introduced to computers. We were starting to use computers. At the time, we didn't, as it relates to courts, we had not adopted a case management system initially. And then so that actually started with our district courts, the family and civil courts back in 2003, I believe. And so that was our first. We had computers, but we still had the paper files. And so that was the only adaptation or adoption of technology as it relates to courts and how we do business. And so one of the struggles were that people couldn't understand. It's like, well, why do we have to? I guess those paper files, Josh, were like a security blanket, or Linus, had to have this blanket. And so everyone, they needed that blanket. They needed the security of having that physical paper in their hand, as opposed to clicking and looking on the screen. And so I explained to one of the judges. They were just like, they couldn't understand why we would get rid of the paper. And so I said, so if you're needing access to this particular case, I said, but my staff also needed, or the clerk staff also needed this particular case to make a docket entry. I said, so I said, but that's impossible because you would have the file. We could not access the file, or we had the access, but we had the file, and we were doing some work on the system as it relates to that particular case. Someone has to wait. I said, but in a digital environment where you have an electronic copy of a document as opposed to a physical paper, if 25 people needed to look at that same document at the same time, that makes it possible as opposed to paper. So helping them understand the benefits of moving into using technology to make progressive steps forward to efficiencies, that helped a lot.
Yeah, and now I was gonna, you touched so clearly on this idea of modernization that we hear a lot, where it's essentially it's moving from paper to digital, right? Where it's going paperless, and that's a huge undertaking, especially in an office like yours, where paper was the mainstay for so many years.
Yeah.
But to kind of move away from the idea of the modernization efforts that were instilled, which you've gone over there a little bit, what were some of the operational challenges your team faced kind of moving into that paperless space?
One of the challenges, but basically, like I said before, getting rid of that security blanket and understanding that whereas you would use your hands to move through pages, and so now you're using a keyboard and you're using your mouse to click to go through what was a physical document, combing through, licking the tip of your finger to turn pages or whatever, and now navigating from page 1 to page 25 of a PDF. And so the only thing you're doing is just clicking the page. And I will tell you, helping people understand, if you want to, say a judge they're reading a document, and of course you want to make a note or highlight some particular things, you can actually download that particular PDF document to your computer, and you can make annotations, you can make notes, you can highlight, you can do all those wonderful things that you could not do in a document that's recorded with the clerk's office. You cannot make notes on it. And so you basically have to put your notes on something else. But with that efficiency and adopting technology where you can actually make notes or comments on a document and save it for later. And that's also one of those things that encourage, we didn't think about that. Okay, now we have this available to us. And so that kind of helps get people to, once they understand, so they're more embracive of that transformation.
Yep. And now that Dallas County's kind of become this sort of leader in the digitization, online access, things like that, and they're being sort of cited as a leader in those areas, what were some of the first major changes that really moved the needle in that regard?
I think, I will tell you, Josh, the difference between Dallas County and, say, maybe a very smaller jurisdiction, rural county, we all do the same thing, but the difference will be the volume. And so when you start looking at managing paper versus managing an automated process, when you see that efficiency, and so it creates kind of a domino effect, if you will, of these are the things we have to start looking at. When you're in a paper environment, there is a such thing that clerks are responsible for. It's called disaster recovery. And so there have been instances that you may have heard of stories where there was a flood and some of the records were damaged, or they were exposed to the water, and so now you have to do the freeze drying process. But in a digital environment, is basically you have a backup system, you create that redundancy. So if something happens to for your primary set of data, you move to your second set, and that helps with creating those real disaster recovery plans so that you don't have to deal with such a loss or pay in to recover paper that was may have been exposed to water.
Absolutely. Those redundancies are huge. Let's talk a little bit about the staff and how things changed for day-to-day operations for your staff. Like what have you heard from your staff in terms of, over the span of time that things have moved digital? Like what are some of and you can give me some challenging things that your staff have overcome or some highlights in terms of what they're able to accomplish and the efficiencies gained.
Josh, I learned many years ago that the reluctance of staff is due solely to what I understand, what I learned, and when I first started using technology in my office, was that a large portion of my staff did not have computers at home. And so this was not something that they were comfortable with. And so when you talk about doing, when you may have a system update or whatever, and so that became, those were scary thoughts, because people were afraid they were going to do something to harm the system. Mm-hmm. And so helping them to understand there has to be someone who serves as a liaison between the non-technical and the technical to help the technical understand business processes, and for the non-technical, basically the end users, and saying, okay, this is what this technology means and this is what it's going to bring us. And these are the benefits that we will get from that. And so, like I said, being able to learn the difference between a clicking and navigating by clicking and using your keyboard as opposed to flipping through paper. And so it makes it easier. And then, of course, there is the introduction of laptops. So, wow, I can do this from home. I can access this information from another location. Wow, that's impossible. And of course, if you're in a paper environment, the law requires that a clerk maintain those records proper and in order. And so they have to stay within our custody. And so that means those records never left the courthouse. Mm-hmm. And so when you have technology now, you have the ability to, for those individuals who like to work past certain hours where they can still access the information. You may be at home and you may be having dinner and you think, oh, I forgot to do this. But because that information is available to you remotely or in a digital format, you can access that information without saying, well, I know I can't take that paper file home, so what am I going to do? It's going to have to wait. And so having that technology, it does away with that having to wait, and you can continue to work throughout or as long as you want and still have the information available to you.
Yeah, saves having to wait, but also saves a lot of mileage, I would assume, between home and the courthouse to get those files. So from your perspective, when we look at this idea of efficiency, what does it actually unlock for an office like yours beyond just this idea of doing things faster?
Having access to information. I learned, Josh, some time ago that if you remember the movie Field of Dreams with Kevin Costner, that phrase that's used, if you build it, they will come. Mm-hmm. That is a very real thing. I've noticed, and I've learned over years that people want to have access to information. They want to be able to conduct business with, in this instance, local government or county government, and not have to particularly take off work in order to do that, or to come down. You have 1 hour lunch break and you're going to rush to the clerk's office and you're going to wait in a long line that you didn't anticipate. And then, of course, oh, by the way, you may be on a meter. And so I only put 30 minutes in and now I'm at 29 minutes and I haven't gotten to the county yet. And so all of those things, they basically walk away. I will tell you that, if I may, when the Texas Supreme Court, Chief Justice Wallace Jefferson mandated electronic filing, they said, well, the rumor was after that mandate with that e-file, where lawyers have to file documents electronically as opposed to a physical paper, that would be the retirement system for old judges and old attorneys and old clerks who did not want to embrace the change. And so I said, well, what impact will that have on my office? What I am now being delivered or handed to me as a paper document, I'm no longer going to have that paper delivered to me. If I continue to operate in a paper environment, my cost of operations is going to go up because now I'm having to print. So I'm using a lot more ink. I'm using a lot more toner if I'm using that paper. And so that's an increase. And so when I looked at what that would actually cost me, staying in a paper environment in an automated world, it was going to cost me an additional $600,000 a year to maintain physical paper in an environment where physical paper is no longer necessary. So when it comes to some of the business decisions we have to make as clerks, it's all to make sure that we are not going over budget, but we are also being fiscally responsible and using technology to adopt those things that will be beneficial and save the county money.
Great way to get that buy-in, I feel like, is
Yes.
to say, hey, we're going to save $600,000 here. That's a great anecdote. Thank you for that. Stay tuned. We'll be right back with more of the Tyler Tech Podcast. Big news, Tyler Connect 2026 is heading to Las Vegas.
That's right. Join us April 7th through April 10th at the Venetian Resort Las Vegas for an unforgettable week of learning, collaboration, and connection.
Connect brings together thousands of public sector professionals to explore the latest solutions from Tyler, share ideas, and discover new ways to strengthen and empower their communities.
You'll experience hands-on product training, insights from industry leaders, and opportunities to connect with peers driving innovation across the public sector.
You'll leave feeling energized and ready to bring fresh strategies and new perspectives back to your organization.
Registration is open now, so don't wait to secure your spot at tylertech.com/connect.
We'll see you at Tyler Connect 2026 in Vegas, where we empower, collaborate, and imagine what's possible for the public sector.
Now let's get back to the Tyler Tech Podcast.
I wanted to talk about the AI capabilities that you've been taking advantage of there in Dallas County. So document automation being kind of the big one. How have automated or AI-enabled capabilities changed the way documents are processed, reviewed, or made accessible in Dallas County?
I understand that with an attorney's ability to file documents electronically with my office 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and including holidays and weekends, I said, with every day, our hours are 8 to 4:30. Mm-hmm. And so, but a lawyer can file documents 24/7. So every day, an attorney will have a 16-hour head start on us, including 48 hours over the weekend. And then, of course, with employees who have children, of course, you can't control a kid getting sick or whatever. And so you have to take off on those unexpectedly. But the work never ends. And so adopting artificial intelligence, it gives us the ability to assist my employees in still getting the work done, but also not having to just be burdened with having to hit it hard all the time. Because if you push for quantity, you may have to sacrifice quality. And sacrificing quality is not an option. And so we use artificial intelligence to assist us in getting our job done, but it's getting our job done faster than it would be otherwise. Mm-hmm. And so we go, when just like we were closed for 3 days due to the ice storm that we had recently, if we did not have the ability to work from home or use artificial intelligence to assist us with document filings, our e-file queues would be backed up for days. And of course, people want access to information sooner rather than later. And that's one of the things that the Texas Supreme Court, the Office of Court Administration, is looking at. How long does it take to get information in the hands of the consumer or the end users, or not the end users, but the litigants in this instance? And so the adoption of artificial intelligence, it gives my employees, it reduces their stress level. It gives them the ability to maintain a certain quality of production without actually sacrificing the quality of the work that we're doing.
So great to hear the artificial intelligence solutions being more of a helper to the employee, eliminating some of that stress, kind of being an extra set of eyes for those folks. So that's really great.
I will say initially, and of course with artificial intelligence, and it's true, A lot of instances that people use artificial intelligence that end up replacing that human employee. But in my office, I will never use artificial intelligence as a replacement. For me, artificial intelligence, if I have, say, a set of records or maybe 500 or 1,000 documents that I need to process, in the absence of artificial intelligence, it may take me, you say, John, how long will it take you to do this? I said, well, based on this volume, it's going to take me a week. Mm-hmm. But now that I've incorporated artificial intelligence, you ask Josh that same question. My response is, we should be able to complete this in 2 days. Mm-hmm. And so when you look at artificial intelligence with human guidance as it relates to what that artificial intelligence is doing, so you don't have to get into any of those hallucinations that may take place, you're on top of everything. And so it creates an efficiency, and you're able to do more in a shorter period of time than you would in the absence of using artificial intelligence.
That's fantastic. Now, Dallas County has also leaned into data and analytics quite heavily to understand filings and performance and things like that. How has having better visibility into your operations supported this idea of efficiency?
Well, that's one of the things that the Texas Supreme Court and Office of Court Administration and even the Texas legislature has been looking at. Judicial performance. What's happening in our courts? Are people being able to have their cases adjudicated in a reasonable amount of time? And so we do. In the 88th Texas legislative session, there were 2 bills passed. There was House Bill 1182 regarding judicial performance, a monthly report that the clerks provide to the Office of Court Administration as it relates to number of documents that are filed, the number of cases that are filed, how many pending cases, how many cases were disposed of over the course of a month, on and on and on. And then there is House Bill 2384, which is an annual report based. It's kind of like a culmination of all of that activity from the 1182, which is a monthly report, as it relates to judicial performance. And it also incorporates work done by an associate judge, a visiting judge, how much time are the judges spending on the bench, how much time is being used to dispose of cases or to adjudicate certain things in a case. And so that information is provided to the clerks, and we provide that to the Office of Court Administration. But it also shows that the judges are being good stewards of their time, and they are actually cognizant and aware and empathize with a litigant wanting to get this particular thing behind them so that they can go on with their lives. So as it relates to automation, artificial intelligence, and access to data, reports, and information, it's necessary to continue to grow and to develop more uses of technology, more uses of artificial intelligence, because now when it comes to courts, the more information people know that they can have access to, the more information people are wanting to have access to.
Yeah, and now let's dive into that a little bit deeper, at least like flip the script a little bit for you. And I'm not sure how often you get asked this type of question, but I'm curious to get your perspective or point of view on the resident experience. So what would you say feels different today compared to, a decade ago for residents or for people who are actively in touch with the clerk's office or having to deal with the clerk's office?
Well, one of the things that as it relates to that public consumption, if you will, like I said, I'll go back to that field of dreams, being able to have access to information. Or now you can go onto the county's website. We have our records there that's free to the public so that they can see and then they can have access to. And so it gives them the ability to have access to records that they would actually have to come down. And if you are ask for a copy, then we'll charge you for a paper copy. But because we are now in a digital environment or an electronic environment, and so it costs me nothing. I'm not spending money on paper because we have to recoup that. If I provide you a physical paper copy of a document. And so now that means that if I don't charge, that means that my budget is going to go higher. So we charge, and it's allowable. We can charge for a paper record. But because our records are now available and you can go through, we have the public search with Tyler, and so that the public facing, so they can actually go search for information. They can download and print a copy without spending a dime, without coming to our office. A lot of people, what's not understood or realized is that there are a lot of people who grew up in Dallas, in this instance, grew up in Dallas County, but they now live in California or New York or any other place. And if they actually wanted access to records or access to documents, they would have to send us an email. And this is in the absence of having a digital environment, send us an email. Then we would actually have to print and physically use U.S. mail to mail them a copy of a document. And so, or they would have to come to town in order to do business, to get business done. And so, do you really want someone spending $700 on an airline ticket when you can make that information available to, and just says, you don't need me. You can you can call me if you have questions, but everything that you'd want is in a portal on the website. You can go, you can find it, you can locate your document, and you can save it on your computer, or you can print it. And so when you look at those efficiencies from where we were before to where we are now, I don't think once someone have that experience of having access to information in this digital world, they would never want to go back to the way things were. And that's a positive thing. And of course, it also relieves the volume of work that my staff is spending on making sure that we are dealing with the paperwork, but also addressing the needs of the customers that are coming in. And so we're getting it from both ends. But now, once we have that information available, it takes that human involvement out, and you have access to everything that you need. I think that's a positive thing. And nobody's going to want to go back to what we were using 10 years ago or even 5 years ago.
Yeah, I think that's objectively a positive thing for sure. And now, you've made a lot of really great points about the operational efficiencies within Dallas County. I'm sure as somebody who's seen kind of the ripple effect of how technology can create efficiencies within an office over the years. But are there any instances where you're seeing more opportunities to become more efficient? Is there anything that you're looking at on the horizon potentially, or anything within your day-to-day operations where you're going, I think we could make this a little bit more efficient, or there must be a solution here that we can take advantage of?
You're absolutely right. And we're constantly moving. As we continue to progress, we are constantly reassessing our business process to identify those inefficiencies. And we say, okay, now, what kind of technology can we lay on top of this to create a more enhanced operation or more access to that information? So we're constantly looking at that. Of course, there are lots of opportunities and vendors who are focused on the government space and helping the clerk's office or local governments, that not just clerk's offices, be more efficient by using those, by the use of new and modern technology. It actually helps us move in the direction that we want to go in. But also, with every step that we take forward and we have successful implementation of automation, that further gives confidence in those who may have been those people who were not so enthusiastic about it. So now they're starting to recognize the efficiencies, and while they could not see the outcome of what we were telling them was going to be the outcome, but because they're now seeing that everything that we have said we're going to accomplish, we've accomplished, and we've accomplished those things successfully. And so now that builds confidence in them that whatever the direction that we're going, because technology is a constant and ever evolving tool. And so now we have more they have more confidence in it, and they also become more willing participants in a successful outcome of new enhancements that we would be making. But we're constantly evaluating all of our business processes to see what's next. Is whether can we use a chat bot to do a particular thing or provide information to the public? Can we use artificial intelligence to complete a more complex process? Because artificial intelligence, it's constantly growing based on what you expose it to. And so the more, just like with a human, the more that artificial intelligence become confident, or you become more confident that it can do a particular task and they do a more complex task, then you get to implement those things. And that creates what I say, the private sector decision making. Because for me, I don't treat my office, Josh, as a county government office. This is a business. Mm-hmm. And the citizens of Dallas County, those are my shareholders. So they're invested in it because they're taxpayers. And I'm held accountable for making sure that there are efficiencies. We're not continuing to say, even though we don't, but the last thing anyone wants to hear is that we got to raise taxes because we're not willing to adopt technology to create those efficiencies.
It's a really great perspective. I feel like I've learned quite a bit during this conversation. I know our listeners will learn a lot from you for this conversation. Before I let you leave, though, I want to get your advice on what you would say to, another clerk or a county leader who feels stretched thin or unsure where to start with modernization or AI. What kind of advice would you offer?
I would tell them, one, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. I would encourage anyone. One, it's important that you do it because it's necessary. Two, visit a colleague, network, meet someone who's actually gone down that path. Go visit their operations to see exactly what they're doing so you can have that hands-on experience. Spend a day asking questions, sitting beside people, doing that walk a mile in my shoe kind of thing so they will see exactly what you're doing and the process that you make. And then you have those meetings as it relates to the kickoff, all the way of a project, all the way through implementation and go live, so that you can take back to your community or your office those things that are necessary, those things that you did not take into consideration, those ahas, lessons learned from the office that you did visit. And I think those are very productive meetings. But one thing for certain, you're gonna do one of two things. You're gonna do it the hard way, or you can do it the smart way by visiting to see what someone else is doing. And you may also learn that, hey, they have a business process that we have not considered. We do that work as well. And so there's a lot to be gained by visiting someone to see exactly what their operations are so that you can build that confidence in your community that may not have been there either.
Do it the smart way. I think that's a great tidbit to leave off on. John, this was so wonderful. Thank you so much for chatting with me, and we'll have you back on the show again soon.
Anytime. I get excited. I don't know why anyone would get excited about courts and technology and all of this stuff, but I get excited. Josh, I get excited about that.
It's amazing. It's great. Thank you so much, John. As we heard today, modernization in the courts is about more than moving from paper to digital. For Dallas County, it's meant rethinking how information is accessed, how staff are supported, and how technology can be used to improve efficiency without sacrificing quality. John shared how automation, data, and AI are helping his office reduce friction, strengthen resiliency, and deliver faster, more reliable access to records for judges, attorneys, and the public. It's a clear reminder that meaningful digital transformation starts with process, trust, and a focus on outcomes, not just new tools. If you'd like to learn more about the solutions discussed in this episode, check out the show notes for additional resources. We'd also love to hear your feedback. Fill out the listener survey linked in the notes or reach out anytime at podcast@tylertech.com, and be sure to subscribe, rate, and review the show so you never miss an episode. For Tyler Technologies, I'm Josh Henderson. Thanks for listening to the Tyler Tech Podcast.